welcome to BizTechSuktas. I am your host, Sandeep Suryavanshi, and I am the CEO of AidExpert Advisory. In this podcast, we bring you some interesting case studies and stories about technology-led business transformation. We talk to experts who have managed large transformation projects. We talk to companies who have made big bets and who successfully have innovated their business models using digital technologies. Hope to have some great and fun conversations with and lots of learning from our guests. And today we have our guest as our guest Sharath Srinivasmurthy, who is the Associate VP in the analyst firm IDC. Sharath has worked for past 20 plus years on many of them are digital transformation projects for global clients. He has worked for IT and consulting firms like Zensar, DXC, IDC now, and is an SP Jain and ISB alumni. So Sharath, welcome to BizTechSuktas. It's really exciting to have you here. And I think reimagining customer experience (CX) is one of the major challenges for most firms today, because it is a difficult journey, but definitely a thing to look forward to.
Thanks, Sandeep, for having me here. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Great. So Sharath, I think reimagining customer experience is really a no-brainer in today's world. That it needs to be done is definitely understood by most CEOs and CIOs, chief digital officers, if you may. But that is really a very difficult journey. We see that organizations now are not able to really think differently, and they are being held back. So what are you seeing in terms of when you talk to your clients about CX projects? Where do you start? How does the project even begin?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Sandeep, to start with. Before we get into where do we start and what is holding back organizations on their CX journey, first let's understand why this entire customer experience thing is becoming important than ever before. Okay. There are multiple factors to it, and what we are seeing is the pressure on revenue is building on all the organizations. So, due to the pandemic, a lot of businesses had taken a hit on their top lines as well. And of course, their operating margins are under stress. Yep. But the pressure on generating additional revenue, new sets of customers, as well as retaining existing customers is becoming extremely critical. And on the other hand, we are seeing the product differentiation is blurring, because a lot of organizations are having similar products to offer, and the differentiation factor is reducing. So this is where, the service comes into the picture, the customer service comes into the picture that can act as a differentiator. The second reason why we are seeing a lot of thrust on customer experience and why organizations are going on that journey is the pressure from the competition is also mounting. Now we are all spoiled for choices, right? If we don't get a better service from one organization, we obviously have other organizations to latch on to. We don't like a particular shopping experience, we have other alternatives to look into. So the pressure from competition is mounting. That's the second factor that is driving CX initiatives a lot among the enterprises. The third is changing customer expectations in terms of speed. The need for speed, as they call it. Customers want everything at their fingertips and should be delivered, and they should be able to experience that product very quickly. The hyper-local deliveries, and even for that matter, experiencing certain things while you are sitting at home, are becoming the new norm. Opening a bank account, a lot of people don't even prefer to go to the bank to open a bank account, even for that matter, buying insurance. So the need for speed and instant gratification is increasing a lot among the customers. Absolutely. And startups are disrupting this space big time. Yes, that's another reason why traditional organizations actually should go on a customer experience journey, because the way as I said, insurance is delivered is getting disrupted by a lot of startups. Traditional banks have been challenged by neobanks. E-commerce, e-commerce is challenging the way we do shopping. So the startups are disrupting this entire landscape, and organizations need to differentiate themselves with better service. And with all these complexities, putting it all together, what actually matters is the way you onboard your customer, the experience that you give during onboarding, after you onboard, the way you treat the customer, and how do you retain and deliver lifetime value to customer becomes extremely critical.
So, as you mentioned, I mean, I think many of the examples that you gave are B2C, but I guess we know that B2B is also significantly disrupted, and the CX journeys are, in fact, sometimes more complex in B2B than B2C. So, do you see that relevant CX initiatives relevant into B2B space?
No, obviously, that's a great point again, Sandeep. It's equally important in B2B as well as in B2C as well as B2B scenario,
Right.
Because at the end of the day, a customer is a customer, whether you are dealing with an organization or whether you're dealing with a single person, it really doesn't matter. And all the factors that I mentioned are equally applicable in a B2B scenario as well.
Right. Absolutely. Great. So in terms of getting started with, I mean, people don't really understand, okay, if we want to do that, then will it mean that we need to kind of have a 1-year project or 2-year project or that kind of a thing? Or are there smaller, faster, more quicker results possible? What kind of methodologies are there available or you guys use to really get into this, the CX project?
Yeah, see, at the way we can look at CX from multiple different angles, and I would want you to visualize customer at the center and data around the customer. So that is where it all starts, because the customer has a lot of data around him, and every conversation, every journey, every experience is going to be measured based on the data that gets created, right? Now, customer and data are at the core of any CX journey, right? Now, I talked about conversations. Now, it's very important to look at what kind of conversations you are having with your customers so that you can build contextual awareness, which in turn will lead to predictable communication with the customer. That is extremely critical. Yeah. The second thing is I talked about journey. How you need to look at the customer data that you have and build customer journeys, which will eventually result in what we call as frictionless engagement. Once customers have frictionless engagement, they'll be able to generate lifetime value. Now, customer satisfaction on an ongoing basis, you keep measuring them, and then you will be able to generate mutual trust because you will be able to address queries faster and better. And this entire experience of dealing with that customer is going to give you a lot of data which you need to process and synthesize and do a learning on an ongoing basis so that you can use that intelligence to deliver better customer experience. Now, conceptually, this is the way you need to look at a CX journey. But how do you do it on the ground? See, it all starts with the basics. You first need to identify the personas that you interact with. Any organization will have a set of personas that they generally interact with. So that's the first step in any customer experience journey. Then, you need to map the persona's journey across all possible paths. So, the positive parts as well as the negative parts. When I say negative parts, what are the areas where there is a chance that the customer can drop out? What are the steps where there is a bit of friction that is getting created? Right. So, these things, there's a lot of whiteboarding that organizations need to do, picking up each persona and mapping his path across the entire, duration with which the customer is engaged, possibly with that organization. And then comes process re-engineering. Having identified the persona, having identified the journey, you need to look at re-engineering your existing processes, and this is one of the most difficult ones as well. So this is where you can probably split this exercise into smaller bits and pieces. You devise a new process and run trails, and how does the new process work? If you run a trail, you will be able to understand what is working, what is not working, and then comes technology. So once you have put the process in place, look at the right technology which you can leverage to enable that process to work better. So when you start using technology, you need to start small, choose the simplest of the processes, the easiest ones. Try an MVP, try a small thing, use an iterative methodology like Agile, do course corrections and improvise, and then gradually expand to the larger organization. In this entire journey, user experience experts play a very critical role. So you need to bring them in the earlier stages itself, so that you map the journeys properly and then devise the systems accordingly.
So Sharath, actually just I wanted to kind of highlight one aspect, if you could talk on that. See, I've always found that the biggest gap is in understanding, especially the personas identification. One is identifying the persona. We tend to see, okay, anybody is our customer, that kind of a thing. So which, kind of clubs all the customers into one, and then it's really impossible to say specific things about that. So one aspect is micro segmentation to really, so that is one. And the other is, if you could talk a little bit about what is the kind of depth you're talking about when you talk persona. Good persona documentation, I think, is absolutely critical for everything after that. Because the moment you say, okay, I have got like 17 different kinds of personas identified, and the depth of the persona documentation, if you could give maybe a sample of something, that would really explain to our audience that what's the depth are we talking about. Because, persona is easy to say and people use the persona as a word very easily. But I think the depth is really where the value comes in.
Correct. Now, this, I'll tell you, the persona becomes very critical because of various types of customers an organization interacts with. The second is various generations of customer that the organization interacts with. Now, a lot of organizations actually think that enabling certain things online or developing an app is delivering good customer experience. But can my father use an app seamlessly? Can my father log into that website seamlessly? I still see a lot of people struggle to use mobile applications while the facility is available, the company provides it, but customers are not able to use it. So it's extremely critical to identify, not only identify persona A, B, C, D, E, but it is also critical to identify what is the generation that you are dealing with, what generation does that particular persona belong to, so that you can deliver relevant customer experiences. The next level of depth that you need to build is what kind of interactions that this persona can have with your organization. These type of personas generally come for inquiry. If they want to do a proper transaction, they will come to my branch. Of course, you can't generalize, but at least you will have some data to analyze and make those opinions. This particular generation wants to complete this entire transaction online itself. Some other persona, has a complete requirement altogether. They will come to me only post sale. Pre-sale is pretty easy. It's completely taken care of. So at what do they interact with my organization for is the second step. And once you have identified what do they interact with an organization for, that is when you start building processes for each of those interactions. And as I said earlier, when you are defining processes, you also need to define the positive paths as well as the negative or the failure paths. Where are the chances? More than the positive paths, identifying the failure and the friction points become extremely critical. And then you map each and every persona journeys.
Great. Yeah, that is really great. So, so as you mentioned, so acquiring the customer is sometimes the beginning, just the beginning. I mean, yes, it's a challenging portion, and we talk about acquisition costs and all that, which is there. But the real fun in many of these business models, which are subscription based and all that, is the lifetime value that we are able to derive out of that customer. Both ways. I mean, we deliver value and we get the rents, that kind of a thing. So building a 360-degree view of the customer, how do you re-engineer? One is business process, and I think, especially our audience has got both kinds of people, business owners and CTOs and tech leaders as well. So I'd like to like you to talk about a little bit about re-engineering for the complete 360-degree view of a customer. What does it take?
Yeah. So let me give a personal example that I have gone through so that we can relate it to better. So I had a home loan with one of the banks, and I wanted certain documents, copies of some documents. So I sent an email. First of all, the portal was not that intuitive, so I had to send an email asking for those documents, and I got a call that you can come and collect the copies of those documents on a particular date. So I apply for a half-a-day leave and go to them. And on the table, the person says that, sir, you had taken your loan before 2018. Your data is in some other system. The current system that we are working on was actually implemented in 2019. So we need 2 more days to extract that particular data.
That's definitely lots of friction there.
So and then I had to do this thing all over again, go to them after 3 to 4 days, then get that. I inquired if you can send it to my home. No, you have to come to the office, and that's the last time I'm going to deal with them. Once my tenure is over, probably I will never take another loan. Correct, exactly. So this is where the 360-degree view of the customer comes into the picture, right? It's not about selling that particular product to me. It's about visualizing how is my service journey going to look like, and how is my entire lifetime going to look like while I'm engaged with that particular organization. So the critical mistake a lot of organizations do, Sandeep, when they embark on the customer experience journey, is focus more on customer onboarding, especially on sales and marketing, and then focusing less on the impact of post-sale activities. So this is where data becomes extremely critical. And one of the data points actually say that out of all the data an organization has, only 5% of the data is actually useful, which will be analyzed and will be made sense of. So imagine the amount of data that gets created in the organization, and imagine the amount of data that gets leveraged. So you need to pick up the right data to make sense, and then derive customer journeys accordingly till the service comes into the picture. Even during the service, there are a lot of areas where friction will get created. You need to identify those things as well, and then map your journeys to the persona. So this is where the concept of lifetime value will come into the picture. So process reengineering is not just about onboarding, but it's about visualizing how the client is going to interact even during the service phase.
Right. Yeah. So, in terms of mapping out these journeys, one is, even if you've visualized all of these now, there's a significantly complex technology landscape in trying to achieve this. Because, you would see that, okay, there is, just to collect the data about, what's the demographic of this customer, or even if you say that, okay, when a single B2B customer is dealing with my customer service department, dealing with my front desk, or dealing with the sales folks or pre-sales people or all that kind of stuff, am I able to capture all this information together and cobble together a truly valuable view? That is one challenge, and I don't think so there is a very easy, like people say, okay, I'll use SAP ERP or Oracle ERP in the earlier days, and they would literally map out most processes pretty easily within that, whichever, maybe even if it's manufacturing or services or whatever, bulk of the processes would be configurable enough within that. But in this landscape, I think there's significantly complex, even in the front end during customer acquisition, and then trying to put together all these sources and doing that. So where do you see the biggest challenges in implementing such projects from technology perspective? Where are the biggest challenges?
Sandeep, the biggest challenge that I see in this journey is taking a technology first approach. I think technology will fall in place as long as you understand your customers and you have your processes right. So one of the mistakes that we have seen a lot of enterprises going through is, they keep interacting with a lot of IT vendors, and you find a good solution for omni-channel engagement. Okay, let's bring this in. You find a good solution for a CRM. Okay, let's bring this in. You have a good solution for a chatbot. Okay, let me also implement that. Now, at the end of it, you will create a diverse set of you will create an application landscape which will be so diverse and so complex to manage, and each and every system will sit and operate in a very disjoint fashion. So that is when your marketing team is not able to properly talk to the sales team. The sales team is not able to talk to the onboarding team, and once the onboarding is done, the information doesn't even flow to the service team. So the biggest challenge that we are seeing is that a lot of organizations take the technology first approach and try to use the best in class tools that are available in the market, which is not the ideal way of doing it. If you have re-engineered your processes properly, if you have put the right processes in place, you can easily find technology solutions where you can configure those processes and make it work for you. So that's the first challenge that I see. The second major challenge that I see, Sandeep, is in terms of change management. Now, how much ever process mapping and persona-based mapping you do, whatever technologies you bring in, at the end of the day, there is an element of human interaction that is involved in delivering customer experience. Now, if the person who is sitting and talking to the customer, either on phone or face-to-face, is not able to have that empathy, it's not going to work. And the way you interact with your client needs to change. So people who are at the front desk need to undergo this change management in the way they need to handle the customers and the way they need to handle the system that they are using. The third challenge that we see, Sandeep, is in terms of tracking the process of customer experience initiatives. So if an organization is able to, take an enterprise-wide approach and then, map the journeys and then implement technology, it's easier to track the progress of these initiatives and measure the success as well. If different departments start operating on their own, it becomes really difficult to track and operate.
Even measuring the impact of that or being able to really be successful itself becomes
Correct.
Not an enterprise-wide approach. Yeah. Excellent. Great. So yeah, excellent summary of these three challenges that are primary challenges, apart from obviously many more. Great. So I guess this brings us to looking in the future. I mean, I think there's, as usual, there's a lot of hype, but a lot of reality where there's new technologies. AI is not necessarily new, but AI is there. We've heard a lot of chatter about GPT now, and 5G as well is coming in. AR, I think, is a big bet where people like Apple and others are betting big. Even though the metaverse seems to be sort of in trouble right now, and crypto is definitely down the tube. But so there's a lot happening which is going to impact all of this. So what's in looking, say, maybe 3, 4, 5 years in the future? What do you see? Where are the biggest changes and sort of reinvention of the CX further? Where do you see that happening?
Yeah. So there are interesting technology advancements that are happening, and we see this every decade, right? The previous decade was all about cloud and also adopting AI. Now we are seeing a lot of momentum, or at least talk about 5G and AI at scale and things like that. But over a period of time, a lot of these things will become reality. So, for example, there are some interesting use cases on 5G that are being discussed. Connected ambulances, for that matter, when you are taking a patient. How can you be connected to the doctor and remotely monitor his health? By the time he reaches the hospital, everything is set, and the doctor can get a first-hand view of what's happening in the ambulance. The AR, VR kind of experiences, that's something that a lot of organizations are looking at. Remote diagnostics and treatment and personalized engagements at the edge is something that 5G can even deliver. AI, artificial intelligence, still has a lot of potential. We haven't harnessed it completely. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that AI is all about chatbots. That's just one of the use cases. But intelligence in terms of processes, decision making, taking the next best path, these kind of in a process flow, these kind of things using AI are going to drive the way the customer journeys will be defined and handled moving forward. And last is even blockchain, for that matter. Even though a lot of people confuse blockchain and crypto and use it interchangeably, there are a lot of industrial use cases in
definitely. I think the trust in disjointed system can really be quite clearly established by a blockchain, and especially the blockchain version, which now reduces the impact on the environment significantly. I think that's the you don't need. When the earlier version of blockchain was very, very carbon heavy, now the new I think almost 90% reduction in the carbon footprint is a great step towards genuine use cases of blockchain. Yeah, that will be really great. Okay.
Correct. No, in fact, we have seen examples where one of the governments is using blockchain as a technology for caste certificates, for education certificates, and things like that. So that reduces a lot of friction between the consumer and the one who is providing those services.
In fact, I have seen, I think, Indian government probably not using blockchain yet, but a very good use case, pensioner certifications. I think they've moved out. So the banks are integrated into that whole system where Aadhaar-based pensioner verification is happening, and banks get direct intimation that this is the certificate for that pensioner. I think every year they have. So that is a perfect use case for distributed ledger blockchain kind of thing. But you're right. I think those are the things that those would be the real value add to businesses that we would see. But this is great. So customer experience, I think our audience would have realized that there's much more to it, much more depth, and not just technology. There's obviously a very complex technology, but you cannot take a technology first approach. And if you look at an enterprise level conversation as the starter, then there's a way, greater success potential. So thank you so much, Sharath. It was really, great insights our audience heard from you. And really thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing that with us. It would be, I'm pretty sure it will spark a lot of conversation and thoughts in our audience's mind.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks for having me here. It was an interesting discussion. I always love talking to you. We'll keep the conversation going, and I will keep interacting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.